Cold exposure reduces inflammation through an interplay of physiological stress responses and cellular adaptations. Cold exposure acts as a hormetic stressor, a mild challenge that triggers the body to adapt and become more resilient. This stress activates cellular repair pathways, including autophagy, cellular cleanup, and mitochondrial remodeling, which help reduce chronic inflammation. When exposed to cold, blood vessels constrict vasoconstriction, reducing blood flow to extremities. Upon rewarming, blood rushes back, flushing out inflammatory mediators and improving circulation. Sustained cold exposure that induces shivering triggers deeper metabolic changes, such as increased glucose transporter activity, enhanced fat metabolism, and stimulates anti-inflammatory cytokines. These effects are more pronounced when the cold exposure is long enough to cause shivering. Cold exposure activates brown adipose tissue, more commonly known as brown fat, which burns energy to generate heat. Brown fat activity is linked to improved insulin sensitivity and reduced inflammatory markers. Cold plunges release adrenaline, cortisol, and dopamine, which can modulate immune responses and reduce inflammation in the short term with a neurological surge. But with all these benefits, cold exposure also carries significant risks that can be mitigated if done properly. The major risks of cold exposure are hypothermia. A dangerous drop in core body temperature below 35 Celsius can cause shivering, confusion, slurred speech, drowsiness, and in severe cases, unconsciousness or death. A cold shock response, such as a sudden gasp reflex and hyperventilation when entering cold water, can lead to drowning if the person inhales water or panics. One way around this is to enter cold water gradually and never alone. Frostbite can occur when freezing of skin and underlying tissues, usually in fingers, toes, ears, or nose. Cardiovascular strain happens when blood vessels constrict, increasing blood pressure and heart workload. Cold air can trigger asthma or bronchospasm, especially during intense breathing in cold environments. Continued drop in core temperature after exiting cold water due to cold blood returning from extremities. Never do cold plunges alone. Warm up slowly afterward. Avoid hot showers immediately after ice baths. Consult a doctor if you have underlying health conditions. All of the risks can be avoided if cold exposure is done gradually over time in a sensible manner. This is how I started building a resilience to cold water with hypertension in my 30s. First I tried cold showers, but preferred a whole body submersion. So I have filled a bath, got in, and left the cold tap running slowly. The bath eventually filled with moderately cold water and a gradual temperature drop. This avoided the shock. I remained in the bath for 5 minutes fully submerged, washed and got out. This I repeated every other day for a week. After the first week, I began with less hot water, and by the third week, I was filling the bath with cold tap water only. The temperature would read 11 or 12 degrees centigrade. The effects were amazing, like having a strong ibuprofen or painkiller, but without any nasty side effects or stomach upset. Then it became addictive because of how good it felt. It didn't just reduce my inflammation, but also cleared my brain fog and gave me a way to distress. The water bill began to creep up, and I wanted to go colder. So I bought ice to top up the bath with, but this started to get more expensive. I eventually put a cold water storage tank in the garden and let winter do its thing. As the seasons changed, I went from 12 degrees centigrade and eventually ended up breaking the ice with a hammer to get in the garden tank. This was a game changer. I went from 30 seconds in 0 degrees water to 2 to 3 minutes. What I learned was that the colder the temperature, the less time needed, but the more risk, especially with hypertension. But at that time in my life it was needed. I now do 10 minutes in the bath, cold tap only, once a week. Why once a week? Well, it's exhausting, especially when you have an autoimmune disease that gives you fatigue. Cold plunges are like having a workout in the gym, and I no longer need an aggressively cold plunge. I am not a professional. Please take care. Seek professional and medical advice. Do your own research. The information is out there. I am simply sharing what I have learned as a patient that has an autoimmune disease and how I have naturally reduced the inflammation in my body. Please like and subscribe.